Welcome to the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. COVID-19 affected every business differently, but it's an interesting challenge when you run a 170-year-old luxury Swiss watchmaker whose main marketing strategy is based around major sporting events thrown into chaos by the pandemic. But the experience of watchmaker Tissot is an interesting insight into spending habits, marketing and brand loyalty. Scott Jungwirth is the General Manager of Tissot, Australia and New Zealand. Scott, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Thanks for having me, Sean. Great to be here.
First, tell me a little bit about Tissot, the luxury Swiss brand with a lot of history, but it's also a little more affordable than some of your competitors.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Tissot really is quite an extraordinary brand. It's one of the oldest watch brands in the industry. It's almost 170 years old, which that in itself is quite incredible. It was started in 1853. Incredible rich history, steeped in tradition. It's always been a very innovative brand as well, and we've had a strong connection with sport all around the world, including basketball, cycling, and MotoGP, which is really what appeals to me about the brand. But I must say, in Australia, I don't think many people really appreciate just how big Tissot is. And I know when I started almost 7 years ago, I certainly didn't. It's one of the few Swiss watch brands that actually generate over £1 billion Swiss franc every year. We produce over 4 million watches every year. And just to put that into context, 1 in 4 traditional watches that come out of Switzerland is actually a Tissot. And I think it's with that volume that we're able to produce such a high-quality timepiece, but at a very affordable price.
Now, for those who don't know the watchmaking world, and I must say I knew nothing about it until 3 or 4 years ago when I went to a watchmaking conference, it is a whole new world. There are people who are absolute avid supporters of watchmaking and particular brands, and it sort of opened my eyes to it. Typically, who is the Tissot customer?
I think Tissot has a very broad appeal. It's quite difficult to pinpoint exactly who our customer is because we have collections that have more classic styling, so something that you might wear with a suit, something you'd wear on your wedding day. But we also have collections that are a bit more casual, a bit more sporty, inspired by fashion. And with our price points from anywhere from $400 up to $2,000, yeah, there's something in our collection for everyone. And I think that's really the charm and the appeal of the brand and why we're so successful all around the world.
So you've been particularly successful during the pandemic. Your online sales surged more than 300%. Why do you think it worked so well?
Yeah, it's been a crazy year, crazy 18 months really. And as you said, I think our online sales have completely exploded. A couple of years ago, we certainly identified e-commerce as an area we wanted to improve and grow. At the time, it was a relatively small part of our business. But I think with the pandemic, it's brought forward the trends that we were seeing in the online space forward at least 5 years. I guess a reason for that, there was different times during 2021 where we only had 30% of our retail network open. And what that did was really just drove people online. And I think it certainly opened up the eyes of many in the industry. Before the pandemic, I think there was lots of different people in the industry that didn't think you would buy a watch online, a traditionally more tactile product. But I think the last 18 months has certainly changed that.
Okay. You've also, apart from the online sales, you've got partnerships with traditional retailers like Myer and David Jones, as well as jewelers. Where's the balance between the two? And I understand what you've just said about the online sales whilst everything is being closed. Where do you think that will head, though? Because I have probably 15 watches, to be honest, Scott.
Yep.
And I'm really proud of all of them, and I've bought them in moments of my life in the last 30 years. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I think about watches. But I would never buy online. I really like the experience of going into a big retailer like Myer or David Jones or a branded store and looking at them.
Yeah, and I think that was definitely an attitude that many in the industry held. There's a new wave of customer. The younger shopper, Tissot, because of the great price points, we do appeal to that 18 to 30-year-old market. We also recently launched on the iconic biggest marketplace in Australia. Yeah. And younger audiences don't know any different. So they're just so comfortable buying online. But I think what's happened with the pandemic is it's introduced a lot of that sort of middle age and older to the online space. They're now buying online. My parents, for example, had never bought a thing online. Now they do it regularly. So
Yeah.
it's just changed consumer habits. But to your point, I think there's always going to be the importance of that store experience. It's a brand experience.
What about the outlook for watches? Now, again, I'm falling on my own experience. As I said, I've got at least 15 watches. I wear one every day, or at least I did until the pandemic. And now, because I have to take my phone everywhere because you've got to sign in, and particularly if you're walking or something or other, actually having a watch isn't quite as important. Have you noticed that at all?
Well, there's a whole movement and growth of that smartwatch, which is more of a device category. We don't like to see it necessarily as a competition. It's more complementary. I think the smart device, which everyone loves to wear during the week, it step counts, it does all those kind of things. The industry that we're in is still watches, which are jewelry. So watches really should be worn for special occasions. I think you mentioned earlier, they're great to celebrate milestones. And I bet with all your watches, you could probably pinpoint the moment in your life when you got those and what it symbolises.
Yep, totally. Stay with me, Scott. We'll be back in a minute. I'm speaking to Scott Jungwirth, General Manager of Tissot. Okay, so you mentioned that Tissot does a lot of marketing around sport. It's one of the reasons that attracted you to the brand, and you've had sponsorships of basketball and MotoGP, Tour de France. How did you go during the last 18 months when many of these were actually cancelled or at least disrupted?
Yeah, it was very difficult, and we certainly had to adapt. I think what it took away on a local level, I mean, a lot of those sports you just mentioned that we're timekeeper, they're international events. So often the experiential part of those sponsorships, like attending a basketball game, isn't something that we're used to in Australia anyway.
Yeah.
But on the same note, it's that part that was removed from us. I mean, the broadcast still happened, and I think what we saw across all those events with so many people in lockdown is the TV audiences went up, the digital audiences went up, the social engagement increased as well. So I guess from a brand perspective, it meant that we had more eyeballs to communicate to. We just had to do it in a different way. And so a lot of our approach to marketing moved from that event activation experiential into a more digital space to try and connect with the audience that was growing.
Okay, you must like the NBA, that's the US basketball competition, because you've just extended the deal there. Obviously huge for the US audience, but it also has huge following in Australia and across Europe.
It's massive. I mean, basketball in Australia is growing. It's on a real resurgence, and I think you only need to see what's happening with the NBL and the way that they've been able to grow the sport in Australia. And so for us, even though the NBA is international, it's about interest in the league, interest in the sport, and as I mentioned earlier, more audience. So the greater the audience, the better for brands. So it's still very relevant, and it's a really exciting sport for us to be involved with.
And my beloved Knicks beat the 76ers as well. Irrelevant, I know, but anyway. Bringing you back home, you've also engaged Australian athletes, from rugby league and AFL, athletics and cricket. How's that strategy working for you?
Yeah, I mean, I really love working with talented athletes. There's a whole movement of influencers, which are certainly a big part of our marketing mix. But I think the value of working with athletes is you can really trust their audiences, very authentic, and they're often very engaged. So, some of the athletes that we've worked with, Ryan Pappenhausen, Adam Zampa, Morgan Mitchell, Marcus Montempelli, they've got great audiences. They're very aspirational to a lot of their followers. And I just think it's a great way to communicate our brand through such talent. And I think combined, they have over 500,000 followers collectively. So it was a really good vehicle for us to promote the brand.
What's really interesting in this is yours is such a historic, trusted brand, but you're using thoroughly modern means to market it and keep it relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably where we merge tradition and innovation. I think tradition is always about staying true to what we do in watchmaking and quality, but innovation needs to not just come with product, but also the way that you promote your brand, the way you connect with consumers online, in-store. Innovation's got to be the driving inspiration. So, yeah, Instagram, all the new social media platforms, TikTok even, they're all really important tools for us to continue to connect with the customer.
Now, the final question is, it seems that every industry seems to have supply chain problems at the moment. Every time I speak to someone, they're talking about supply chain issues. Is that affecting you guys?
It is in different parts of our business. I think we're fortunate that we get a delivery of watches from Switzerland every week. And while there has been a few delays, it hasn't created too many headaches for us. I think where there's bigger problems, more to do with our merchandising and those kind of delays.
Yeah.
Things that should have been here 2 or 3 months ago are now looking like they'll be here next year. So it is impacting us, but we're fortunate that we can still get access to our product and not creating too many headaches. But it will be interesting to see how that plays out coming into Christmas, because the last thing you want to do is have a watch arrive after Christmas Day.
Absolutely. Now, Scott, how many watches do you have and what's your favourite?
I have 5 watches, all of them Tissot. So when I first started, I had a couple before that. But I must admit, my new favourite, is our new T-Touch Connect Solar, which is our first connected watch, which we've just launched. So I've been fortunate that I've had it on my wrist for the last couple of months, and I'm just really love it. I love the fact that it's a nice hybrid between normal sports watch, but with a bit of connectivity, which is how I like it.
Scott, thank you for talking to Fear and Greed.
Thanks very much, Sean.
That was Scott Jungwirth, General Manager of Tissot Australia and New Zealand. This is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. Join me every morning for the full Fear and Greed podcast with all the business news you need to know. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.